This is Smart Investing with Mike.wren.
Securities and advisory service offered through KMS Financial Services.
This is Smart Investing with Michael J. Wren. With Michael's producer, Chris Martin. You can email us your questions. Go to smartinvestingshow.com to see how.
For I have the pride, the privilege, nay, the pleasure of introducing to you the one, the only.
This is Smart Investing with Mike.wren.
Well, hello again there, podcast listeners. This is another episode of the Smart Investing Show, where we try to take the topic of investing. Number one, we try to make it easier to understand. Number two, we try to get you good, relevant information on each and every shoe. And thirdly, we try to be entertaining. And with the entertaining portion, let me tell you, the producer extraordinaire, Mr. Chris Martin, or Martin, as we know him in Otis Orchards, he's back from Seattle Comic Con. Now, I know maybe some of the ages of the listeners that might be listening to this podcast, they might not know what a Comic Con is.
They might not care either. But
well, that's a given of the entire age groups. That's in the entire listening audience. No, they'll care because it's something. When you dial up an investment or financial podcast, you don't expect to hear the word Comic-Con.
No, you don't.
That right there, that proves how good this podcast
Unless
is.
someone calls up and goes, I bought a comic 5 years ago. I'm wondering if I can go to college with it now.
Well, thankfully, our phones are turned off, so we
Sweet.
won't have that problem. Yeah, so you went to the Seattle Comic-Con.
Seattle
Again,
Comic-Con.
How many years have you been going to this thing?
I'm going to say at least 10.
And let me tell you, the listeners, Chris looks normal. He doesn't have a tattoo on his face or anywhere else that I can see. Thankfully, his body's covered. And you don't have any black eyes.
Just Google image selfie dad, and you'll see a lot more of what I'm talking about.
And you look normal. So you came through unscathed.
I did.
Sweet.
You know, it started out in one building, and now it's in 3 buildings around downtown. And what's great is my wife and youngest daughter went down there, and they just wanted to go for a little bit just to see what it was like, and then they'd walk around Seattle.
Those would be called civilians that just want to see a little bit of.
So let me tell you, for those that probably, I don't know, Hawkeye from Avengers.
Oh yeah,
he's the bow and arrow guy. Well, I was dressed as him for this charity booth that I go over to and help out every year, and so I was waiting for her to come pick me up because I'd had it. I can't go through the whole day. I'm too old. And so I called it quits about midway. So she told me to meet her one way. I have the worst direction possible and went the other way.
Let me just interject this. Chris is telling you the truth.
Oh, yeah. She said, look for water, and I couldn't find the water in Seattle.
The last time that Chris sent me a text, it was basically, dude, we went to the wrong hospital.
Yes, I've been at 2.5 of my children's births. I almost missed the last one. What do you mean you're not in the maternity ward? I'm standing right here and I don't see you.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Deaconess and Sacred Heart are built too close together. That's what it is. Because if I can still make it from one to the other and the kid ain't born yet, that's too close.
No, but it's called convenient.
Is that? So so she's driving around and I'm walking the wrong way. And once you get past 2 blocks from the convention center, people aren't there for your comic convention. People are there to go to work, to have their jobs, to meet their friends. And here's a man walking around.
But it's Seattle, so there's some some costume wearing every day.
I'm wearing a long trench coat with a bow and arrow, walking up and down the sidewalk. A little uncomfortable until I saw the person in front of me with bright pink hair, cut capris, and a heart tank top, and thought, I'm not the one that's dressed weird.
You're right.
Even though I had a bow and arrow with me.
I just wish it was in Portland because the story would even be that much better. I think maybe even Fred Armisen would have run into you. So good. So anyway, what that means is Chris had fun. He got to get out of the Spokane area. For Chris, getting away from snow, that's a vacation for him, even if he has to drive.
So nice.
4 hours in a minivan, I'd rather take the snow. But for you, I know you'd rather have
yeah. You know what? For a bonus for our listeners, I will post a couple photos on the Smart Investing Facebook page.
Okay.
So you can see all my glorious nerdiness.
The one thing that I know for sure is they will be compliance friendly.
Absolutely.
So on today's show, let's see here. I have really been laying it on thick, because it deserves to be laid on thick, about the psychology of investing, about people having anxiety, what triggers the anxiety, having to deal with it. And I'm just going to touch lightly on it right now. Here is maybe an example of why you should believe me, is that we all have something that bothers us from when we were probably little, I would think, or we still have. It doesn't even have to bother us now. It just has to be a memory that's vivid enough that we remember it from many, many decades ago. You have something like that, wouldn't you? I think everybody does.
Like something you were afraid of, or
yeah, it could be anything from kind of traumatic, where your mom or dad being too rough with you or too strict with you, or something scary. It could be anything. It just has to last the decades.
Okay.
Okay.
I got a few of those.
I think everybody would.
They all involve nudity, though. Is that wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we might want to edit that out. No, I'm just teasing. I wanted that to be on the pod. I just wanted that to be out there for funniness. So anyway, us as human beings, I'm sure all of us have something that has stuck with us over the decades that has no bearing on our life right now. It actually does, but it's not real and material today. Well, if that can be the case with something that's probably just emotional or anxiety producing, let's fast forward and think about you as a grown-up, and you're trying to take care. If you're, let's just be extraordinarily traditional, because it's what I'm familiar with. Let's say that you're the guy like me, and you're trying to provide for the family and make sure that everybody has all the stuff that they need, health care, that you're watching it, making sure everybody does their homework, everybody practices their instruments, that everything's taken care of, that people have snow tires, that the cars are maintained, that the yard's cut, that more likely that the driveway's shoveled. Let's say you're the other partner, where you're trying to make sure that somebody like Mike is well fed, maybe too well fed. Maybe you're, making sure the kids are all taken care of all, not all, but a lot of the domestic stuff that that he will never, ever pay attention to. Okay, you got a lot going on. So let's ratchet it up a notch. You're trying to make sure that these kids can live without you in life. You're trying to groom them so they can be independent. And then you start thinking, well, I want to be independent too. I never want to be a burden on them. I sure hope I'm making this choice right and that choice right. I wonder how much money we've got saved. I wonder what the investments are doing. All of a sudden, you can see that anxiety wall climbing high really, really quickly. So that being the case, can you imagine how much anxiety can be generated in a human being when you're dealing with something material, real, it's in the present day, so on and so forth? That's when they're thinking about having enough money, and money is kind of too factual, has to be more of emotional, that you want everything to be okay when you're in retirement. And everything to be okay in retirement, that really covers a multitude of sins, doesn't it? It covers a multitude of worries. So that right there should be very indicative of how emotionally charged what I try to do with clients can be. So if you're listening and you get emotional about money all the time, it's normal. But it would be helpful if you realized it. I think a lot of people, or they realize it and they think that they're the only one that feels that way. No, it's. I just wanted to touch on that if you've been listening to these podcasts in succession and you kind of might get tired of me talking about the psychological stuff from time to time, well, that's why I talk about it so much, is because it happens so much.
And a lot of things, yeah, they do. Like just this week, this is how much changed. Like when I was younger, I was like, my funeral, I'm going to have a big casket and, and buried in my Jedi robes, and I want a certain song playing.
Stop. I can only write so fast.
Okay. But the other day, my boy, he's put in to be assistant manager at the store that he works, and it's like less than a year, and my daughter's got her crap together finally, and so my first thought was, you know what, when I die, just burn me out back. I'm fine. Just
like a Viking
yeah,
thing.
like I don't want to be your burden. Just Jill, just don't spend a lot of money, because I don't want you to spend your money on me, because I'm done.
People can change. Life changes. There's different stages in life that people think about different things. It's extremely important. And I really like giving people reassurance and comfort no matter what's bothering them. But before we get too touchy-feely today, I thought I'd give you a break on I thought I'd stop for the rest of today's show about the psychological stuff, because I think with me touching on it just that little bit, people should be nodding their head. Yeah, that's important. So moving on to the next one. What happened this week is, before I talk about baseball, because baseball season started, and there's a good segue to that.
Sports ball.
Yeah, sports. Something that's been driving me a little bit crazy is this crash of the Boeing airplane. And when I read articles, I think I'm a pretty good judge of English or how something is written. And I have to tell you, it seems to me that the media in the entire world are absolutely hell-bent on ratcheting this shit up to a fever pitch, that something is incredibly wrong with either Boeing or the world or air travel. They're trying to make something out of nothing. Let me here are the facts in case you're one of the people that might think that there's something, deathly wrong here. If you are a neurosurgeon and you screw up, somebody's going to die. Because when you're a neurosurgeon, you're not operating on somebody's toenail. It's a little bit more serious than that.
For some.
Yeah, good comment. If you make cars, there's going to be recalls. There's going to be some dip-do in there that drives a car into a group of people and kills them. Nobody ever blames the car there. But yet you have an airplane crash. And what does Boeing do? They build airplanes. If an engine doesn't start, you're not going to hear about that. You're going to hear about the thing crashing. So when you are in the business of making airplanes, occasionally one's going to crash. It's going to be big news. But other than that, that's all it is. What do you think happens when people build airplanes? Occasionally, one is going to fall from the sky, no matter what. Whether somebody shoots it down, whether somebody drives it into a mountain, or maybe something happens and the tail falls off and you go spiraling to your death.
Or what was it? Geese went into the
oh,
engine?
yeah, Sully. Yeah. I mean, so let me give you the facts. The facts of these little pissant third world countries that people like to fly in. They're pilots. How much do you think they're trained? I happen to know. I happen to have a couple pilots as friends. The pilot in one of the last two crashes, the co-pilot had 300 hours. I have 300 hours on my cell phone, for Christ's sake. Okay, 300 hours. What's required to be a co-pilot for Southwest Airlines? 3,000 hours. Just the co-pilot. So I have to tell you that the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of the time, the human is the weak link, just like in investing. And, an off button doesn't need to be printed in a whole bunch of different languages. If you can't find the off button for the computer so you can revert and just take control of the airplane, it's your own damn fault. That's what happens. That's the truth. Everybody out there, Boeing needs to do this, Boeing needs to do that. Bullshit. How about have people do their job and train? And if you're Ethiopia, why don't you hire somebody from the United States to fly the thing that has 3,000, 4,000 hours? Get this, maybe pay them a bonus to live in that area, or fly. You know what I mean? That's the fact. That's the fact. That's what happened. But I read all of these articles, and I've got clients calling me, what do you think about Boeing? It's nothing. It's serious, but in terms of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you've got a pilot that didn't know how to turn the freaking computer off when it was acting up. My computer at my desk acts up, and I want to burn the thing. But that is what it is. That's what's happened. That's what's happened. And even if Boeing had made a mistake, it happens there as well. You know what I mean? It happens. That's just the way the world is. There is no grand plan. That just happens when you build aircraft. They're going to crash from time to time, and it's a horrible thing. You got anything to add to that, Mr.
Nope. I just want to thank everybody for listening to our last podcast. It's been great. I'm going to probably go into hiding.
What? Well, the only thing I said bad was Ethiopia.
I don't know, pissant country kind of stuck out.
Okay, if somebody's listening online from Ethiopia, well then we are not getting paid enough.
I was going to say, there's no way he's going to apologize. So how is he going to say this sentence?
Yeah, I have to admit, sometimes there was once years and years ago where I accidentally said the BS word on air.
Oh,
and
that was a dark day.
Chris looked at me like I had just thrown his children off of a bridge. Because
I knew the 6-second button did not work. It hadn't worked since we went into that studio.
That's pretty good. I only made one mistake in 12 years?
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, so that's pretty good batting average.
Yeah.
I only made you mad. Well, mad in that way once out of 12 years.
I wasn't mad. I just...
Let me also give you...
You know what? I didn't know where to turn off the computer. So
let me also give you a hint. If Chris has car trouble and he leaves a message on your phone and you tease him about it later, it's not a good thing.
Worse than an ex-girlfriend bringing up stuff that happened 10 years ago.
Hey, like I said, it's psychological.
Yes, getting my battery stolen in Spokane does affect me. That's why I hate coming downtown. One of the reasons why I hate coming downtown.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I went on that rant. It's just I get so bloody tired of people that should know things that just keep ratcheting things up and up and up to a fever pitch. And then I heard the news today, well, now Ethiopia's worried that people, if it finds out that their pilot made a mistake, then people might not want to fly on their airline as much. You think? I was that way already. I don't have to... if somebody's getting on an airplane to fly it and they're wearing a soccer jersey, I might have second thoughts. If it's not my dad, my dad doesn't wear soccer jerseys, so it's kind of okay. Yes, my dad's a pilot, so yeah. So
I may have problems with what you said, but I'm going to probably steal that bit. So,
what?
Wearing a soccer jersey as a pilot.
You're going to steal it for... Yeah. It might be funnier if it's later in the day, smoking and drinking. Yeah, that
maybe.
Might be. So I mentioned baseball. I watched a piece of one game and another piece of another game. The Mariners started the baseball season over in Japan. Japan, baseball's big there. It's very, very organized.
This is
very disciplined. It's not a joke.
You know how closely I follow sports ball. This wasn't an official thing, right? This was just kind of, okay.
No, and what's cool is Ichiro. Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard of him.
Oh, wow.
I did.
God, hold on. Dear Diary.
We had an action figure of him in our comic book store.
You mean a bobblehead?
No, it was actual. It was like the McFarlane.
Well, Ichiro to Japan is kind of like Pele to Brazil.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky to Canada. So anyway, he played his last game for the Mariners there. And
I'm so old because I remember when he started.
Yeah, and in the same game, the Mariners have a new pitcher from Japan. It's Husei. His first name I think is Husei Kikuchi. That's a good name. Kikuchi.
Are you sure it's not Canseco? Yes. You're just saying it wrong. No.
Right. Chai Rodriguez. Yeah, I'm not Les Nessman.
He's from Penn Oral. Is that?
No, his last name's Kikuchi, and he was a good pitcher over there. And people are wondering
where the signs in the stands are going to be.
Blurred. People are wondering what the hell this investment thing is when there's no investing. So they're talking about he was the leading. You won't know this, but I'll just say it. the leading for the low ERA for the Japanese league. So he got signed by the Mariners. He played his first game. So in this game, same game, his first game as a professional in American baseball, and Ichiro's last game. It's kind of cool. Kind of a big deal for the Japanese.
So
we don't have to talk about it more. You don't have to say so.
No, I was just because now I'm curious, and I know everyone listening isn't because they all follow sports ball. So where was Ichiro? Which side was he? Was he still pitching for the Mariners? And it was his last
Ichiro
game?
was an outfielder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were on the field together at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, so why am I talking about that? Well, when you have spring training, I think I may have mentioned this, but hitting a baseball is hard to do. Obviously, these people get paid hundreds of millions of dollars to be successful hitting the ball 30% of the time. When you are a professional baseball player, each and every year, you go back to spring training to get your timing down to hit the ball, to learn how to catch the ball, throw the ball, and hit the ball. That's it. And so this time of year, it kind of tends to be that way when I've got earnings reports coming out and I've got clients after the first of the year wanting their tax information. And by the way, have you looked at the portfolio? And yes, and all that. It's a time of year where I I almost always tend to concentrate on the fundamentals of companies. It is the smaller portion of what I would do for a client. The larger portion would be psychological, but it's something that is easier to understand. It's more cut and dry. It's more logical. So over the years, like I've mentioned in other shows, if somebody's going to behave properly, I'd rather just own the better performing investment vehicles, rather than the investment products that my industry likes to sell. So I like to own the individual companies because, one, I know what I own. Number two, I can more easily evaluate those companies based on how they perform against their peers. They release better financial statements than anything else, than an investment product. They actually have a CEO and a board of directors that want the company to do well. What you may say, well, why? Well, obviously, a mutual fund company, they want their mutual funds to do well, but it's investing, and emotions play the part. And how do they do well? Well, they do well. Obviously, you would think, well, by having good performance, where they want to have good performance figures next to the mutual fund. But how they deem if they're really, really doing well is if they're gathering more assets to manage, so they can get more income from those fees on the assets that they manage. You see how it's it's not exactly the way that you would think that it would be. Where if you're selling hamburgers, how many hamburgers did you sell? Boom. Pretty easy question. Costco. What was your average shopping ticket that you got? You see what I mean? Yeah. The board of directors, the CEO, everybody's aligned with if they do better, they make more money. And with the investment products out there, they have to do better to get a good performance figure, so then they can advertise the crap out of that performance figure and hopefully attract more money. And it seems convoluted to me. Just because it is. So when you're looking at companies like, let's say, a Verizon, so subscribers, cell phones, cell phone use, blah, 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 blah. I like investing in the individual companies. And many times there's many things that I look at individual companies. Big macroeconomic trends. Yeah. What are the macroeconomic trends, in my opinion, now? Well, they're pretty easy to talk about, but you'll never hear about them pretty much in the news because there's too much negative stuff to talk about, like airplanes crashing. So you will I pay close attention to gene therapy. In the pharmaceutical arena, gene therapy, the new CRISPR technology, that is what's going to drive that entire industry for decades to come. When a person can modify the DNA, the genes, to try to help somebody that's got a bad disease and target it for their own particular body, their own DNA, that's powerful. What else do I pay attention to? High-speed communication, very, very high-speed communication, like the new 5G wireless standard that's going to be released, where the 5G communication standard is 100 times quicker. True 5G is 100 times quicker than the Wi-Fi that you have at home. That's a big deal. That should be equivalent to, let's say, a feature-length movie being downloaded in like 7 seconds. That's quick. That allows the ability for a lot of things to happen more quickly and more accurately. Artificial intelligence, it's kind of a weird name because it's not really artificial and it's not really intelligent. We're talking about big data, for example. I was reading some articles. It would have been, let me see if I can get, it's the March 18th edition of the Bloomberg Business Week. It would have been page 47 through 50. There's a couple articles on big data. The first article, a bumper crop of information. It's talking about how seed companies like Bayer, Syngenta, DuPont, BASF, Bayer, by the way, bought Monsanto, if you're wondering why I didn't say the name. They are using information collected by farmers, loading it into their computers, and once they get multiple years of this information, based on what the weather patterns have been doing and the chemical makeup of the soil, they can tell the farmer what should be the most optimal seed count to drop and how much fertilizer to use. That results in a better crop for the farmer, which they can then charge the farmer for that information, up to like $1 an acre. Well, that's pretty handy. All of a sudden, the farmers, believe it or not, farmers are probably more up-to-date. Big-time farmers are probably more up-to-date with some of the technology that's going to drive the future economy than anybody. When you've got drones and you've got the ability to take data real time, especially when a farmer has a laptop in his cab of his tractor, you've actually got the ability that a brewery could order hops or wheat from a farmer that had a little bit of a tweak to it, where they want the wheat to be maybe just a slight bit over mature from the sun. They could order that from the farmer. They could actually figure out which fields that they want to buy from the farmer. The farmer can then in turn say to a potential customer, you can have the data from the crop ever since day one and see exactly how the crop is raised and see what types of food items that it's going to benefit you the most. You see how it becomes very, very, very customizable because of all this data. And they made a point in this article that typically all of the data from a lot of these farmers is in spiral-bound notebooks out in their shop for sometimes the farmer that was interviewed for this article at 6 generations in Iowa. That's a lot of data. So there's a company that actually specializes in going in, pulling that data from all of those decades of spiral notebooks and putting it into the computer. And that way they can kind of bring it forward and try to help manage the educated guesses that a farmer will make for a better outcome. Pretty nifty. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen in most industries. People kind of don't realize that. So big data, kind of quasi-artificial intelligence, that's going to be a huge driver of the economy. Huge.
Well, I see it also like weeding out a lot of, like, if you can, order from a certain place, it's going to weed out the farmer that just does his thing. It's like you're going to have specialized places all over the country.
Well, maybe not. As long as it's
there'll always be the generic beer. So
well, maybe not necessarily, but I see it being most people like more information where their food comes from and how it was raised. Well, here you go. This is the framework where the future of eaters will be able to get their information on that stuff. It's kind of cool. I think it's really kind of nifty. So those are the big trends that I think of. And of course, the types of computers and computing systems that you have that run all that data, well, companies like Intel and Taiwan Semiconductor, they basically have a duopoly in the world on the microprocessor. The third company, which would be Samsung, they build microprocessors of that similar type as well, but they don't sell to the third market. They keep all of their stuff for themselves. So, and by the way, what did I mention? Some time ago I mentioned Verizon and maybe McDonald's, and I just now mentioned Samsung, Intel, and Taiwan Semiconductor. These are just for discussion purposes, okay? I'm not advertising or advocating that you buy or sell these types of companies. I just am telling you what I do a lot of reading about, research about, investigation. So when you've got a big microprocessor company like that, that's some of the building blocks. Let's think of it as an old railroad. And the cars are the data. You need some locomotive to push that data and to crank it out. Well, that's what those microprocessors do. And it's important. And they've been important for quite some time. And they will continue to be important for quite some time as well. It's not just that. I keep track of normal type food companies like a McDonald's. It's public record, but McDonald's has been moving towards a game plan to where they don't want to own, in the future, they don't want to own any more corporate stores. People probably don't realize this, but McDonald's is one of the largest landowners of a franchise company out there. They own most of the land that's underneath the McDonald's stores. So McDonald's gets their money basically in two ways: from a rental lease on property, and from the franchise fee that the person who owns the McDonald's has to pay the McDonald's. Well, what about those two numbers varies very much? Not much. That's a pretty steady income for a very large company. See, when they own a corporate store, they have a lot of the variable costs come into play, and they don't like variable cost. They just want it to be kind of cut and dry. So when you get right down to it, when you think of McDonald's, yeah, it depends on them selling hamburgers, but more likely, in a more realistic way, it could be better said that McDonald's profits depend on those franchisees being excellent marketers of and servicers of people that want hamburgers and French fries. Don't look at Chris and I, because we would never eat in there. Snicker.
No. Terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So if they can keep people like Chris and I happy, they'll make money, and then they'll have enough money to pay their lease payment and their franchise fee. And in the ultimate end, the McDonald's corporate is more, their revenues kind of directly are more from real estate than selling hamburgers, if you would think about it. So it's kind of funny that way when you dig down to some of these companies. So when I'm talking about basics, the companies that I follow, I have four, other than taking a big look at the big macroeconomic trends and just, admiring companies that really do their business so well that it would be hard for another company to come along and compete with them. And when you do have companies that definitely compete with each other, like the banks, those are easy to evaluate one against the other. What is this bank's strengths? What are its weaknesses? In other words, what do they do well? What do they not do well, and so on. Sometimes you have a company like a Costco. Who are you going to compare Costco to? I mean, what is the other company out there that has a membership that sells a lot of stuff? Only thing that I can think of is Amazon Prime, because you don't have a membership to Walmart. You just show up anytime you want, right?
Yeah, I just keep thinking
there's Sam's Club.
Sam's Club.
Yeah, but we don't.
But I don't think that even almost exists anymore.
No, I think they do. I just don't think we have them here. But I've never seen one. So anyway, traveling helps. Traveling overseas helps. Look at these companies. But when I'm tending to the basics, all the companies, I need to know what their earnings estimates are, annualized and normalized. So you take out the highs and lows for 5 or 10 years, and you do the same thing with the earnings estimates going forward. Why is that important? Well, so I can figure out what the price-earnings ratio of a company is. Basically, it tells me how much times their earnings I'm having to pay to buy the company. So obviously, paying a company to buy it, paying 5 times their earnings is a lot less than paying 20 times their earnings. It's as simple as that. A PE ratio, it should be fairly homogeneous depending on the industry, so that it really wouldn't be easy to compare, let's say, the price-earnings ratio of high-tech companies to banks, but it's usually very helpful to compare it when you're dealing in one industry. Let's say the pharmaceuticals. comparing the price-earnings ratios of similar companies there. Banking, in telecommunications, things like that. So it's a nice thermometer, basically. It tells me the relative expensiveness and relative cheapness of companies in a said industry. Second thing that I look for, and earnings growth, by the way, would be with that earnings. What is, I think I mentioned it, what has it been? And another kind of take on that is what is the earnings yield? You do some math and it tells you, depending on the dividend, the earnings, what are you kind of getting as far as a percentage from the company? I don't want to go too much in math on a podcast. It's got to be a bad podcast, I would think, wouldn't you?
If they have their papers and pens ready.
Yeah, I'm sure they would.
I mean, for the three people that are left listening right now.
Yeah, after my Boeing rant, I don't think that's so the three people that haven't pressed delete. Next thing that I look at is something called the price to book value, or basically the book value of a company, and it's pretty fun. It's you can see companies when they get really depressed. Book value of a company is its tangible net asset value. So all the stuff that you can see and touch, the property, plant, equipment, cash in the bank, cash in the books, cash underneath that till drawer, that's its book value. And obviously, a person that's selling a company just for their book value, well, it must not be doing very well, because if you're buying a company just for the book value, you're not having to pay anything for the blue sky opportunity of the next day of the customers. Like I always use that 7-Eleven example, where if you were able to buy the 7-Eleven for book value, just what the value of the real estate was, and the building, and the gas in the tanks, and the inventory, well, then that means that the next day's customers are your customers, and you just got them for free. It'd be, almost like if you were selling a subscription house and you only sold it for the value of the desks and the building and the printing machines and the people that sat there on the internet. You weren't having to pay anything for the next day's revenue stream that was coming in from the subscriptions. So usually when a company is selling, when you're buying it, you're probably buying it for some multiple, like of sales or profits. But if you can find companies, which I have before, especially when the market goes down, I've talked about them on the radio show, talked about them on podcasts, when you can get a company that is trading for close to book value or at book value or even below book value, and it's not going broke and they have profits, well, typically that's a hell of a good deal. What else do I look at? Nice important thing, dividend. What's that? Well, that's the cash that we get from the company that they share with us, the owners. And having a dividend is really, really sweet because it's cash flow. And cash flow is nice to have. And it's cash that we don't have to wait for. We get it before. We don't have to sell shares to get it. We just get it by owning it. And what's nice is the dividend rate typically is really, really steady. So even when the price of the company is going up and down and up and down, let's just use Boeing. Instead of me going on a rant and a rave, let's just talk about it. The stock price is down because everybody's negative on it. The dividend is holding rock steady at $8.22 a share because all of this bad news is not affecting their earnings, and it's not affecting the dividend. And that would have been the same thing for Boeing back in 2007 and 2008 when you had the banking crisis. The banking crisis didn't affect Boeing. Their profits were fine. Their dividend increased every year through all of that. So not only does the dividend stay the same if the company's doing what they're supposed to be doing, you typically get dividend increases each year. That's like if you owned your own rental piece of property and you were able to increase the rent to your renters every single year. Well, my gosh, you do that over 5, 6, 7, 8 years. That rent has increased a lot. The cash flow from that investment in that building has increased a lot, or from that house. Same thing when you own a really good company. All of a sudden, the dividends that you're getting 5, 6, 7 years later, they're a lot more than when I originally bought it. Yeah, that's typically what happens when you own good companies. Another thing that I look at is price to cash flow. How many dollars do I have to put in the company before I get $1 of cash flow back? Because cash is king. When you've got cash, It means that your bills are paid off. It means that you can go out and buy somebody. It means that you can make the company much more efficient. So anyway, those are just a few of the easy-to-explain things that I look at when I'm evaluating companies. The basics, the fundamentals. Those are the four of a lot of the fundamentals, but they're important enough that, see this cheat sheet here?
I do.
Yeah, this cheat sheet, that I made it myself decades ago, and it has those four fundamentals splayed out for every single company that I follow in detail, and there's probably a couple hundred companies that some of them I know more about than some of them that I know less about, but I know that data on all of them.
I think it's apparent to anyone who's still listening that emotion does not play a concern in the things that you look at.
Yeah, it does.
It's stats, statistics, and math.
Well, yeah, but also, Costco, they kill it. They're a good company. Obviously, what I mean by killing it is look at their competitors. They don't really have any. They do good year in and year out. McDonald's is another one. Microsoft's another one. Starbucks is another one. You've got lots of companies out there. Microsoft, when Stephen Ballmer was running it, was going into the ground. And now that Satya Nadella is running it, he's doing awesome. It's becoming much more profitable. So when I'm doing this as long as I have, you have companies that have good business models, and then you have companies that have good management that shows up. And then when you get the two together, that's when you really get somebody that's just an amazing company that does well year in and year out. So anyway, I hope that this podcast was useful for you. Again, a little bit of apology for ranting and raving about Boeing, but truly, that is the truthful situation. If you look back over the last weeks of all of the things written about Boeing, it seems to me like the media is trying to whip up a firestorm when you actually should know the facts before you whip up the firestorm. Other than that, I pay attention to fundamentals, and if you have any questions, go ahead and give me a call at the office, and I like to talk to folks. That's pretty much it for today's show.
Again, don't buy anything that you just said.
Yeah, the disclaimer. Yeah, I don't obviously hate Boeing. I hate the media. Let's get that straight. All of the companies that I mentioned, it's not a solicitation to buy or sell at all. If you do it, I wouldn't recommend it. You need the help of a professional.
And if you want to know, if you're just listening, if you want to know where our Facebook, YouTube, and bios are, just go to smartinvestingshow.com.
Yeah, and in the not too distant future, I'll actually get with the program and have a website for my investment office here. I just have to make sure that it's done simply, and then I have to run it through the regulators to make sure that it's okay, that I'm not trying to tell you that you should be a member of Amway and you're going to double your profits every 30 seconds, something weird like that. They just have to check stuff like that. Okay, thanks for listening today. We'll be back again probably in another week.
Any opinions expressed herein are given in good faith and are subject to change without notice and are correct only on the stated date of issue. Past performance is not always indicative of future results. This material is not intended as an offer or solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security or other financial instrument. Security, financial instruments, or strategies mentioned may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, or income from any investment mentioned in this report may fall against the interest of the investor, and the investor may get back less than the amount invested. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as a recommendation of particular securities, financial instruments, or strategies to you. Before acting on any recommendation on this material, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular circumstances, and if necessary, seek professional advice.